All right, everyone, thanks so much for tuning in tonight. Hopefully you can hear me. Otherwise, I'm in a room talking to myself. But if you could just let me know in the comments that you can hear this coming through loud and clear, that'll be a huge help. Like I said in the comments, I've put the countdown so that I can just make sure everything's working well. So if it does mess up, it's down to me, not down to technology. But if you could just let me know in the comments that you can hear me, that'd be a great help. Alrighty, so I noticed a few people there saying they can hear you, which is fine. Thank you very much indeed, Luke. And Deb, I see that you say I'm really quiet. I don't know if anybody else is thinking it's quiet. Maybe, I don't know, turn your volume up. Right, I've got 3 minutes and 7 seconds to go by my clock. So I'll keep diving in. Trevor, it's ambient, mate. It's to make it very mellow, to calm me down. I'll dive in just before we go live, but hoping that you get a lot from this tonight, folks. It's going to be short and sharp, but I'm definitely going to have a Q&A session at the end of it as well, so that by the time we've finished, you know it all. Luke Owen, pardon, what did you say? You having a dig at my accent? Deb, I don't think it was your problem. I think it was mine. I think the background music was a little bit too high then, but Chuck, my friend Sizzle Monkey, has let me know about that, so I'm manually controlling it. But all should be good when we go live. Hello everybody, thank you so much for joining me tonight, or this afternoon depending on where you are. Looking in the chat room as it was doing the 5-minute countdown, we're all over the place tonight. We are international, which is fantastic, so thank you so much. This is the first, I guess this is the first webinar really that I'm doing specifically for my email group. And on that note, I've got 2 apologies to make. The first one is, I'm sorry about the emails yesterday. I really do not know what was going on. I think I was on a Zoom meeting at the time I sent the first one out, and I realised I'd done it wrong. And I was still on the Zoom meeting when I sent the second one out, and then I kind of just, it all went terribly wrong. So Lesson number one, don't multitask. Well, certainly me anyway, I can't multitask. But the other apology, and it's not really an apology really, it's just to sort of say that, you know, you folks are kind of part of the email group, the community, and I've kind of realised that I've not been doing stuff specifically for you. Yes, I kind of send stuff out every now and again on emails and stuff like that, but I want this to be, you know, something more than just sending you stuff occasionally. I want to do stuff that's dedicated just for the email group, because otherwise, why would you be part of it? Do you know what I mean? I think it's really, really important. And if anything's taught me, you know, anything I've been taught over these last few months, it's how important this kind of community stuff is. Do you know what I mean? And talking to community, there's some great friends of mine in the chat. There's Craig, there's Anthony, Trevor, Mike. There's loads of folks in there that I know really, really well. So, you know, connect with each other in the chat room as well if you can. But tonight we're going to go through the invisible black background. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you'll know that I've kind of had this technique around now for quite a while. However, over recent times, I have changed it. Whereas before, the way I used to do it was using the native sync speed, the maximum sync speed that your camera and your flash could talk to each other. And then I would use the aperture to get what I wanted. That was because back then, not everybody had access to something called high speed sync. Now I think that's pretty standard. So that's why I use that now, and I do it much different. And it's actually much easier, much easier. But there are some steps to it which I want to cover tonight. We will have Q&A at the end, like I said, because I want to make sure by the time we finish this that you get it, that you totally get it, because this is a really, really cool technique. I didn't make this up. I gave it a fancy name, but I've just used it quite a bit, but it is really, really cool. So what is it? Well, first of all then, the invisible black background. I kind of called it this because it kind of does make it look as if you've put a black background behind somebody when you haven't. You know, it might be outside, it might be inside, but you don't have to have backgrounds there for you to be able to do this. You can actually just do it using the flash. And I did it going back a few years ago. The New York Times picked up on it, which was just amazing, absolutely amazing. Yeah, Anthony says the original video was 2009. My God, is it that long ago? That is scary. That is scary. But the kind of pictures that you're going to be able to do with this, I mean, you might not want to take a picture of a dog, but, you know, it can be done. Taking pictures of dogs, it can be taking pictures of portraits of people, indoors or outdoors. And in fact, talking of that, those two pictures there, they were taken. Basically, this is the behind the scenes video of when I recently did these when I was originally did this actual webinar on Facebook for a camera club. But you can see there, we're photographing my friend Stephen's dog Star, no background. It's a bright sunny day. And here's how I did the picture of Stephen. And again, you can see, you know, it's a really bright day, but you wouldn't necessarily know that. You can see there's no background there. It is so incredibly simple, but really, really effective. So you don't just have to do it on dogs. You don't have to do it on people. I've also done it on still life. And I used to tell people that I'd photographed Arnold Schwarzenegger when I kind of hadn't really. I'd photographed this action figure, but it kind of looked like I had. I mean, look at the detail in that. It's just insane. It's also a great technique for photographing, doing that real low-key, minimalist kind of photography when you're photographing physiques. Now, I know you wouldn't believe it now, but I used to be a competitive bodybuilder. And if there's one thing I remember, it's kind of Arnold Schwarzenegger saying in the film Pumping Iron that you have to treat the body like a sculpture. Unfortunately, the photographer I had at the time when I was competing didn't, and I think he put every single light he had on me, so it flattened me out. You couldn't see any definition. But you can see here from my friend Nigel the definition that this can give you. You really do literally paint with light. Now, this is taken with two lights, exactly the same principle. And this picture here of a dog as well is one that I did when I was actually in a coffee shop. Middle of the afternoon, I had my minimal kit in the car. I went to it, I asked the owner if I could take the picture, and we did this. So I can explain about that, how I did that in a short while, if anybody wants to know how to do it, because it's just so easy. It really is easy. But for this thing tonight, what I've done is I actually went out and did these pictures here. This is kind of like showing what I actually did for this webinar and the webinar that I've already done as well, to show you that I photographed this mannequin head outside, as you can see, on a very bright day. I did get some really odd looks as I was doing this, But I just wanted to kind of show you that, you know, there's no smoke and mirrors here. I was outside doing this to kind of prove to you that it's that it actually does work. So this is what we're going to use. But when it comes to the technique itself, I've kind of split things into threes. So there's three distinct things that you have to do. So that's what I'm going to take you through now. Three distinct things. And we'll go through this once, then we'll have a recap. All right, because I want to make sure that you get this. We'll have a recap as well. So let me just dive down to this one here, because this is the first tip. All right, so one thing that you must do. Jeff Hawkins, where to get my mannequin head from? eBay. Cost me £5. Okay, so manual mode is where you got to go. Now, sometimes people get a little bit jittery about using manual mode, but believe me, if you turn your flash and your camera into manual mode, it will make life a whole lot easier. So this is just some behind the scenes footage that I did when I was doing that mannequin thing. So it's important that you put the trigger on the camera. Again, we'll talk about that in a minute, because there's a setting that you can't do if you don't do that first. But you can see here, camera is in manual, the flash is in manual as well. All right, so that's the first thing, making sure that you get them in manual. Now, the second tip is your shutter speed. And this is where things kind of change from last time, because what I used to do was, let's say with the camera I was using when I first did this, I think I was shooting with a Nikon or Nikon, wherever you are in the world, and I think the maximum sync speed where my flash and my camera could talk together, and what I mean by that is it's the speed that my camera can go, the maximum speed, so that when the flash goes off, that sensor is visible long enough for all the light to go on it. If I go beyond that sync speed, then you start to get that black bar. So there's a native sync speed. So that's what I used to do. But now that's not the case. Now, because of something called high speed sync, we can go way beyond that. In fact, we can go to 8,000th of a second. So if we can use shutter speeds of 8,000th of a second, we really can overpower that sun. We really, really can. So when it comes to shutter speed, you can see on this video here what I've gone. This is kind of like a bit of a footage to show as I'm dialing up the shutter speed. You can see we're increasing it there. As I do that, the screen's going darker and darker and darker. All right, so it's going darker and darker and darker. So I started off with 125th of a second. You increase it to 50, 500, 1000, and keep going until it gets darker. But that's your shutter speed. Your camera settings, right? Let's talk camera settings. You want to make your camera as least sensitive to light as possible, because what you're going to use your camera, not your flash, what you're going to use your camera for is to set the scene. What do you want the ambient light in the picture to be like? You want it to be black. You don't want to see any ambient light. So you've got to make your camera, this is why we go in manual, because we can really control this now. We want to use our camera settings to make sure that the actual scene, we know the ambient light is going to be black. So the way we do that is this. First of all, take your ISO, your sensitivity of your sensor. Take that down as low as it can go. Some cameras you'll probably go down to 100. Some will go to 50, whatever. But take it down as low as it can go. Then choose your aperture. Now in this one here, I did 5.6, but choose whatever you want. You know, you might want to do a shallow depth of field picture like I did with my friend Stephen. So we've gone ISO way down. Let's choose an aperture, 5.6, but it could be anything. Then the next thing we can do, the only thing then that we have left to make the ambient light disappear, is by increasing our shutter speed. And again, I'll just play that little video for you there. So you can see now, as I start to increase that shutter speed, you'll see that the actual scene, because I'm getting like a real-time preview of what I'm going to get here on the back of the camera, is getting darker and darker and darker until I get to 8,000th of a second. 8,000th of a second now. So we've got 5.6, an ISO of 100, and 8,000th of a second. So the third thing then, we've gone into manual, we've set the camera settings. Now we've got to bring in the flash. Okay, everything's good to go now. So when it comes to the flash, we're all there. I've put my light in a position wherever it needs to be. That's entirely down to you, wherever you put that. But now we're going to put the flash, and the flash is in manual. So, you know, you kind of think, well, what power do I need to put it on? Well, this is going to be experience. You know, put it halfway, put it on half power. See what you need to get out of it then. and then kind of say, have a look at it like I am now. Do you need to go dark? Do you need more light? Increase the power of it. Okay, just keep increasing the power until you get exactly what you want out of that flash, because your ambient light, you know that your camera is going to capture the ambient light, which is nothing, it's just black. But at the same time, when you take that picture, it's also going to capture the light coming from your flash. It captures both of those at once. That's why you end up with this black background and the subject lit. Now, there are a few things to be mindful of. So I've got a little graphic here to say be mindful of these few things. And I've got them written down here. Okay, if you've got questions at the moment, we can post them because we can come back to those. But I remember when I first did this webinar going back a couple of weeks, and somebody said when they've got their trigger on the camera and they're trying to increase their shutter speed, it won't go beyond 250th of a second. No matter what they do, it will not go beyond it. Now that's because your camera and your flash are being quite clever. You've got it knows that you can't go beyond the natural or native sync speed until you use high speed sync. Now, high speed sync generally nowadays is just a press of a button on your flash or on your remote trigger. And you'll see it say H or HSS or whatever, something like that. And you'll just see the symbol for it. Once you turn that on, you'll then be able to increase the shutter speed to whatever your camera will allow you to go to. Now, my everyday camera now is an A7R4, a Sony A7R4, so I can go to 8,000th of a second. If I tried to do this with the camera that's filming me now as a webcam, which is a Sony 6400, that will only go to 4,000th of a second. Okay, so there are cameras do vary. Okay, they do vary. Ralph Baker is saying, can you do this? Can you do this with a speed light? Absolutely, you can, Ralph. 100%. I used to do this all the time with a speed light. The only thing is, don't try to beat this. Don't try to beat the system. All right. If you're going out and it is blazingly hot day, no clouds, horrendously hot, and you've got to increase it to 8,000th of a second, it might be that even at 8,000th of a second, if you're using an aperture maybe of f4, it's still not dark. The only way you can make your back of your camera go dark is by closing down your aperture. You might need to go to f8. Now that's a lot to ask from a speed light, to push light through that tiny hole at those high speeds to get onto your sensor. So what I used to do with situations like that is I'd try and find maybe a bit of shelter, or sometimes if it was a photo shoot that was being organised, I'd just organise it for later in the day. But it's times like this when you kind of find that the kit you've got maybe isn't struggling, because maybe you're doing photo shoots for people, you know, but you're being paid for it, and you can't really kind of say, tell you what, let's do this later in the day if you're being paid for it. You know you need more power. That's when you know you need more, you know, the better kit, or not better kit, more powerful kit. You know, if you're anything like me, and I'm guessing you are if you're a photographer, we love kit. And I went through a stage when I first started out of getting anything and everything. I wasted so much money. If I could rewind time, I would only basically get kit when I know why I needed it. I've got a question here from Adam Norton. Do basic wireless triggerless support high-speed sync? Do you know what, Adam? I'm gonna say yeah. I'm gonna kind of stick my neck out now and say yes. I've got a I generally use the Westcott lighting now, but my speed light is just a simple Godox battery, a 4AA battery speed light by Godox, which I think cost me about £90. The trigger for that cost me maybe 30. That's got high speed sync on it. Okay, so that's got high speed sync. Now, something else I'm going to mention as well, which I think is worth kind of bringing up. Somebody mentioned to me last time, how about using neutral density filters? Could you put neutral density filters on your front of your camera to darken it down and then do it? And I kind of get where you're coming from to say that, but look at it this way. Putting a neutral density filter on, well, number one, that's more cost. Why would you bother buying more kit when you don't really need to? Because you've got the technology already to be able to do this without having to pay out. But if you do want to get your neutral density filters on there, number one, Chancy Pants, yes they do. High speed sync, Westcott lights do, yes definitely. If you're going to put your neutral density filters on the front of the camera, number one, how many do you need? You don't know, do you need 1 stop, 2 stop, 3 stops? So it could end up being quite expensive. But also you're making the actual ambient light go really dark there. So you're making it dark, kind of like using the shutter speed, but you're not. But it's still going dark. So that's asking a lot out of your flash to try and push through that neutral density filter to get onto the sensor. It's going to really struggle. That's why we use high speed sync, because high speed sync isn't just one burst of light. It's a pulsing of light, which allows it to fill the sensor. All right. So I get why some people think, could we not just use neutral density filters? It's not quite as simple as that. You're still asking a lot of your flash, which is why use the technology, save your money, use what you've already got, use your high speed sync. But let me just, Steve Perry, hello mate, how you doing? Let me just dive back to the tips again. I'm gonna go over it again, and then we can get some questions up, because I can see some coming through now. Anthony says, Nina's got a great question. Actually, come on, let's go for that then now. I'll just try and scroll up. I'm looking over to the right here. Let's have a look here. So Nina says, could you use a snoot or narrow beam modifier to ensure the light doesn't spill? Great question. Yeah, really, really good question, Nina. And I'm glad you've said that, because that's just reminded me. In this one here, you've seen me doing it outside. It's a great one when you can take people outside into areas and do this. It really does blow people's socks off. But like Nina was saying there, could you maybe use a snoot or maybe like an egg crate grid in the front of the modifier to really control that light spill? I would say that if you're going to do that, or the time you'd want to do that is when you're indoors. Because then if you're in a room, certainly the size of the office I've got here, if I tried to do it in here with my Octa, before I turn my flash on, yes, I could make the ambient light go dark. But the minute I turn that flash on, it's going to go boom, boom, boom all over the place. It's going to light the room up, and my picture is not going to be black. So you will need to control that light. So quite rightly, like Nina says there, particularly if you're going to be indoors or in a room where you haven't got that much space really, you're going to want to control the light. Even though you've got your settings, that doesn't matter. If you get some light reflecting, it's going to come into your picture. So you've still got to control it. So Nina, thank you very much for bringing that up. All right, so let's just recap. And Anthony, my mate, who's a moderator as well. You've still got moderator status, Anthony. Let's have a quick... Paul Mullins, if you've got a leaf shutter, it's still possible to use technique. Yes, because you can really ramp up that shutter speed on that one, can't you, Paul? So yeah, you're in a whole world of loving when you've got a leaf shutter. Right, so let's go back to the start then. Tip number one, we're going to do it in threes. Manual mode. Put it into manual mode first of all. Both your camera and your flash. Put it into manual mode. Now you see me putting my trigger on here. At this point, generally, I will turn on high speed sync, because I know now, I've done this quite a few times, I'm outdoors, it's really bright, there is no way I'm going to get a dark picture on the back of my screen. I'm not going to darken down the ambient light unless I go way beyond the native sync speed of my camera. So I know I'm going to go beyond 250th of a second. All right, so I know that I need to turn the high speed sync on. The next tip, shutter speed. So because I've now turned on that high speed sync, I know that I can go way up. I can go to 8,000th of a second. All right, but also you've got to remember that you want to, as well as your shutter speed, those other settings as well. It's only in threes, all right? When it comes to your camera, the lowest ISO you can go to, you want to make your camera set the scene, and the scene is going to be black. You want your camera to make it look like you've got a black piece of paper behind your subject. So to do that, take the ISO as low as you possibly can take it. All right, 100 ISO, 50 ISO, whatever. Then choose your aperture. For example, 5.6. Then the only thing you've got left, the only other variable that you've got left now is to use your shutter speed to dial it in until you get a black background. So you can see in this little video here, I've got those settings in. I'm now increasing it, and as I increase that shutter speed, I can only do that as well because I've got high speed sync turned on my flash and on my remote. It allows me to go up to 8,000th of a second. That's now dark. Fantastic. I've now got my scene set. The only thing left to do now is bring in my flash. That's all I've got to do. So I bring in the flash now. Power could be maybe half power, something like that. I'll take a test shot. Have I got enough light on my subject? If not, I will then manually turn it up from the remote, obviously, a few clicks to keep bringing it up until I've got enough light coming out of that flash in high speed sync, which is just incredibly handy to allow me then to do, like you can see here, the before and the after. All right, so there's a lot to this. The high-speed sync is just so handy. It really does kind of simplify things. So we'll get to a Q&A. I can see there's some stuff coming. I can see there's a picture from Norris coming in. I think Nina's got another question there as well, so I'll come into that one as well. But you can't have a webinar without there being deals. So I want to kind of just let you know a couple of things. Let me just get these out to you, just so you know. And again, this is just for the email group. If you use that code in my store, you get 50% off. And that's up until Sunday at midnight. Let's not go on about it too much. But IBB, Invisible Black Background 50, that'll give you 50% off anything in the store. The guys at Sony also let me know that at the moment, if you're a Sony shooter, they are offering a £300, up to £300 cash back. That's valid until the 31st of January, so you can get through 31 until 31st of January. There you go, £300 cash back. Also, the folks at Wex, they set this link up here, which is exclusive just for this webinar, so nobody else has got this link. If you are, and I apologise for those of you who aren't in the UK. In fact, no, you can do international purchase anyway from Wex, couldn't you? If you use that link there, they will also give you a 10% off. So if you're doing a cashback and the link, that's the £300 plus an extra 10% off as well. I always feel like a used car salesman when I have to put those stuff up there, but it's, you know, I needed to let you know about it. But let's kind of have a look now. I'm going to look across now at my screen just to see if there's any questions that we can kind of have a look at. So excuse me while I'm looking away from you, while I look over here. Brian Argyle has put, I think using ND filter for portraits is more for an outdoor shoot in bright light so that a wide aperture can be used. Yep. To separate the subject from the background using motion. Yeah, totally, Brian. In fact, if you'd have been seeing, I don't know if you have, but the stuff I've been doing recently, I took a picture of my car on an airfield a couple of days ago, used an ND filter for that. And also today when I was out, I photographed a guy who owns a mobile coffee wagon. I had to use a neutral density filter for that as well, just to maintain a bit of detail in the sky and also use a shallower depth of field. So you're dead right there, Brian. Luke has put, any deal with your X-drop backdrop? Ooh, I don't know, to be honest with you, Luke. I've really no idea, but I can certainly find out. And if I can speak to Brandon and Amanda at Westcott, if they do have one, I'll post it out to you in the email group. Let's have a look here. So it's just diving through these. Richard Adams has put, I don't imagine this technique is good for female subjects. Do you know, Richard? Yeah, why not? Why wouldn't it be? Do you know what I mean? It's again, it's a choice of what modifier you can use, really, I would suggest. I've seen some, I can't show you now, but there are some pictures I did of a girl from the Far East, and I did her side on. And rather than just lighting all of her face or one side of it, I did a side on. It kind of painted down the profile. And it was, I mean, she had a beautiful face. And just by painting down, it kind of sculpted it. It looked absolutely stunning. I'm not saying that because it was my picture, but it just really works. So I think it can work, you know, regardless of what gender. It just depends how kind of thoughtful you are with the modifier choice for lighting them. Let's have a look here. Let's have a look at Norris puts, use a macro ring flash to get close and focus light instead of a snoot indoors. Can you use ring flash for portraits? Yeah, totally, Norris. Yeah, absolutely you can. That's one thing I've never got into, is the old macro, but I think if this kind of restrictions and lockdown carry on, I might end up going that way as well. Who knows? I'm just doing anything at the moment if I can to keep the tools in my hand, keep the creativity going. Let's have a look here. Nina's put, it's not the trigger that has high speed sync. Your flash has to have it. Exactly. If you are using a generic trigger, it may or may not. Absolutely, Nina. Yeah, great point, Nina. If you're, if you've got your, like my Godox speed light, the trigger that is used with that has got the high speed sync to turn it on. So it will say that it's on the trigger, but the high speed sync is actually on the flash. So yeah, great point, Nina, as well. All right. Oh, Mick Mackey, my mate Mick, has put, what would you have the flash zoomed on? Smallest possible. Do you know, again, that's a great question, Mick, but do you know, ever since I've been a photographer, there's always been this talk about the fact that you can zoom your flashes, your speed lights and what have you. I've never really done it, but I totally get where you're coming from, because obviously in their default, I think the old Nikon speedlights I used to have, I think they were set at 24mm. So if you've got your flash wide open, it's going to pump that light out. But you can zoom them, can't you? You can hear it and you can see it inside zooming. So again, Mick, that's a great point, because that there is going to focus that beam of light, even if you're not using a snoot, that's going to focus it to give you more push and more power out the light coming forward. So yeah, great point. So this is the benefit of doing this, isn't it? Having these comments coming in and what have you, because everyone kind of learns, everyone throws up things I didn't even think of. So yeah, great. I'm just having a quick dive through. Will a speed light on high speed sync work in a speed box? That's from Chaz. Yes, it will, totally. And again, there's so many modifiers now that you can get, Chaz, isn't there? There's loads of companies doing them. The big names is also the sort of smaller brands that are out there selling them for a lot cheaper. But I'll mention Westcott because that's who I do work with, and they're not sponsoring this, by the way. But the ones I use is called the sort of the soft boxes I use, the Westcott ones. They basically allow you to basically use a studio style light. And a speed light. Rather than buying another modifier for your speed light, you can use the same modifier because of the way that the attachments work. So that's a bit of a saving. Obviously, it's a bit of an outlay at first, but long term, it will save you some dosh. All right, so unless my mate Anthony, the moderator, is telling me there's any more questions, then maybe not. So let's have a dive over to here. I'm only putting this up here because I'm using this thing called Ecamm, and it allows you to do all sorts of clever stuff. So I thought I'd kind of put that up there. That's the code, but I had to use a ticker tape. Why not? Now, hopefully that's kind of helped you out. Oh, let's have a look here. I've got my mate Mike. Mike's in the room. Let's get rid of my ticker tape. Oh, I don't know how to do that. I'll leave it there. I'm going to give this high-speed sync a go. Always been nervous to do it. Mike, crack on, mate. Crack on. You can't break it. Just turn it on. You'll be amazed because you can get so much more out of your kit if you do that as well. So cool. All right. Now, if there are any other questions that you get, if we don't get them posted up in here now, then by all means post them in the comments afterwards. I believe we'll be able to do that. Otherwise, just email me. You're all part of my email group and I'll get it all out to you. Actually, good point, Anthony. I'll come to that in a minute. But before we do that, I just wanted to ask you, because obviously what I want to do is do more for the email group. I don't want to feel like you're neglected. Do you know what I mean? I think the community of this is really, really important. I've had some lovely messages, despite my faux pas yesterday with the emails. I got some really nice messages, and it just makes you realise how good this group is. So I want to do stuff for you. So I'm thinking, I've put this picture up here. This is the one that I did today. So what I'm thinking is, would you like me to do a webinar about how I did this particular picture? Because there is more to this than what you might think. And I'm talking about the retouching side of things as well, because I had to use content aware move, which I've actually never had the reason to use until today. But I can definitely do this one for you if you'd like to. If you want me to do a webinar on that one, I can do. Or failing that, I can also do the one about my car, the one that I'll show you how I did that behind the scenes. I've got my friend Brian's going to bring his Ford Mustang up to us in about a week's time. We're going to be on the airfield taking some pictures of that, so that'll be really, really cool. Cool. All right. Okay. Let's have a look here then. So I've got some lovely comments coming through. Try and catch them in. Jill, thank you very much. That's really cool. Anne, I take it, Anne, is that the one for the portrait of the guy there, Paddy, with his coffee van? If that's the case, then I'll definitely do that. Other little things, I'm going to be sending some stuff out to you in the email. There's the Photoshop Summit. That's coming up in November. I'm recording some classes for those tomorrow. I'm doing a power session in Photoshop to show you how you can get Photoshop to do things quicker for you and how you can get it to automate a lot of stuff for you, and also a lighting techniques in Photoshop. But there's loads of other people doing loads of other classes. So the Photoshop Summit that my great friend Dave Cross has organised, that's coming up. And don't forget, register for Adobe Max, which is coming up on the 20th, I believe. Register for that. It's completely free. And there's those of you who are Lightroom users, in fact those of you who use Photoshop, because you've also got Camera Raw, you are going to love the update coming up. You are going to love it. If you like to color grade your images, you will be blown away, because what they've done is taken the technology from Premiere Pro, giving it some steroids, and they're putting it into Lightroom and Camera Raw. It is mind-blowing. You will absolutely love it. Luke, when I'm up in Yorkshire next, oh blimey, as soon as possible, when all this kerfuffle is over, there's a word for you, kerfuffle. Chris, Luke asked earlier on if there was any deal with the vintage grey. I'll find out for you. I'll speak to Brandon and Amanda at Westcott as soon as I finish this, and I'll see if they can do something for us, something just for the group. All right, just for the group. But folks, listen, thank you. Where are the other webinars posted? Chancy Pants, that's a good handle. Where are the other webinars posted? They're going to be in an unlisted area of my YouTube channel, which I'll be sending you folks the links to. I think people can find them even when they're not in the group, but they don't get to do it live with us, so they can answer all these questions. But yeah, it's exclusively for the email group. I'll send you the link out so you can see all the ones that we're doing. This is the first one anyway. We're doing a lot more. But there you go. So it looks like technology's worked fine. Looks like everything's been good. My mate Anthony's really helped out there. Anthony, thank you so much for being a moderator again. You are, as always, a super guy. Right, I'm going to love you and leave you, folks. Look out for your email. I'll send 1 next time, not 3. If you do try the invisible black background, please let me know. I'd love to see what you do with it, because it's great for portraits, pet photography, still life, you name it. Whatever you do with it, let me know how you get on. But I'll love you and leave you, and I'll see you next time.